Just making my way. I got a lot of driving to do today, unless I can weasel my way out of some of what I'm trying to do. In any case, good morning to everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My friends in Argentina are having lunch right now, and the ones in the UK are probably headed home from the end of the day. I guess it's about 3 o'clock over there. In any case, howdy and good morning to everyone. So, title of the video today, Bear and the Dragon. So, what exactly, hold on, my camera's all freaked out now. Oh, now it fucked it up more. Ha, there we go. That's about as good as we're getting today, folks. Where did that come from? So, back in the 90s, Tom Clancy, who's one of my favorite geopolitical fiction authors, wrote a book called The Bear and the Dragon. And the premise was that China, while this was during the tail end of the Cold War, while China was, while the US and Russia were having their games there, China has some incident. I don't remember the premise. I think it was a terror attack. And they overreacted. And Clancy, and they overreacted in such a way that they decided, or I think the oil fields got destroyed by terrorists from the Muslim minority in the west of the country. So instead of making negotiations, they attack Siberia, and that's then they get into it with Russia. It becomes a whole other shit show. Hey Neil, what's going on? So that was his premise, and again, it was a fictional premise at the time. But right now, I'm hearing some interesting talk from a variety of folks that I deal with in my circle, and I think a few YouTubers. I think Prepper Now touched on it. I'm not sure. I got through about half of his video, and I got a work call, and then I forgot to watch the rest. But it's very interesting. What's going on, Neil? How are you today? So I did an experiment today, Neil. By the way, I'm horizontal video instead of vertical, and hardly anyone's watching this live right now. But when I do it vertically, a pile of people jump in, so it's very interesting. But then I get more trolls, so you get, it's a trade-off there. Thanks, Neil. I appreciate it. So in any case, that was his premise. Is China would overreact. And what he stated in the book, or the idea behind the book, was the Russians will play geopolitical games. The Chinese, because of the culture, will need to save face. And they will dig into a point where it's detrimental. And he said Russia tends to have more debate in their, at the time, the communist system they had, than the Chinese did. And again, this was his take at the time. So the premise was China would get into it with Russia because they overreacted to some third-party attack. So right now, as you're well aware, and many people have brought it up, Pakistan and India are starting to escalate, and it's starting to get ugly. Hey, Watchman, what's going on? It's starting to get ugly between those two countries. Now, both of them are nuclear equipped. They each have about 150 to 170 warheads, depending on what report you read. And even the national assessment with the CIA back in the 90s said that this could be a very bad flashpoint in the next 20 to 30 years. And, here we are in 30 years. Hey, Watch, what's going on? So right now, I find it interesting that we've hit China. We hit everyone with tariffs, but I think in particular we targeted China. And now I'm beginning to wonder if the tariffs for everyone else was simply a smokescreen. It was symbolic. Because if Trump went just after China, people would be like, oh, you're xenophobe, you're racist, whatever. So he said, okay, everyone's going to get a tariff. Hey, Suburban, but everyone's going to get a little tariff compared to them. You're going to get 10% here, 5% there, symbolic tariffs to this guy and that guy. In China, you're going to get 220%. That's what we think of you. The other tariffs were a smokescreen for this one. In any case, I mentioned on my last live, they're having riots, they're having protests, people are getting arrested right now because they're going to the street because they can't eat. And the government's starting to panic over there. So the current administration is trying to pivot toward the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India. And India is the big one. And all of a sudden, Pakistan, out of nowhere, executes a terror attack on India. Now, they claim it was they can't help it, it's militants, whatever. But someone pointed out the timing's interesting. Like, just as we're about to try and pivot all this major business away and give it to India, which again is the biggest capacity player out of the Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia group, is India. Pakistan, out of the blue, Pakistani insurgents kill a bunch of Indians right about that same time. It's well known that China is very friendly with Pakistan, and they're not friendly with India because they've got on the other border, they've got a dispute over the territorial lines in the Himalayas. So it starts to make you wonder, is this yet another proxy war with India? Now, India has a big military. They're more than capable of defending themselves. They may not be as functional as the United States, but they were based on the British methodology of warfare. The military is based on the British model, which is a pretty solid model, right? So then you have to ask the question, are they trying to get India? Hold on, somebody just said something really interesting there, but I missed it. I'm going to park here for a second. Pakistan is China's #1 partner in the Belt and Road. Pakistan has to do China. Okay, Neil, that's exactly where I was going. Hey, Cobra, what's going on? Trade wars lead to physical wars. Yeah. So thank you, Watchman. So this is not what we were all looking at. It's almost like sleight of hand now, because it's like, oh, we were looking at Taiwan, but that's really obvious. Oh, we're looking at Ukraine. I mean, that's a hot war right there. Oh, no, the Middle East, Iran is bombing the shit out of Gaza, and they're threatening now to take Gaza, which, by the way, I think that's a play not only to deal with Hamas, but also to get some more property to build the Ben Gurion waterway. But that's a whole nother topic for another video. But here's where it gets interesting, because India buys over 60-70% of their military equipment and a bunch of oil from Russia. So Putin and India have a very friendly commercial relationship. And politically, they get along well. Militarily, they get along. China does not play well with India, and China and Russia don't trust each other. They're friends of convenience, whereas India is kind of like its own thing. So people are now wondering, well, if Pakistan escalates and starts to retaliate against India, and that escalates, well, what side is Russia and China going to take? Because the U.S. really doesn't have a dog in the race right now. They don't have a horse in this race. So it's like, hey, guys, play nice, trying to break up the bar fight. But China and Russia definitely have a big stake in this. And then it makes you wonder, well, now the Taliban has invited America. No, they don't like China, but they're beholden to China. And I think that's where Neil's going, and I agree with Neil on this. In the same time, the Taliban has reached out to President Trump, and this is a very small article, so I can't validate a lot of it, saying that they would like to engage in open trade with the U.S. and have actually asked if the U.S. wants Bagram back. And because they can't handle ISIS. Now, there's speculation if we're pulling the strings on ISIS to go beat up the Taliban to get Bagram back, because it's a massive air base within striking distance of China's nuclear missile field. So there's all this stuff going on between Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and China. It's like that whole, which is right over, and Neil pointed it out. Hey, Daryl, the Belt and Road Initiative. China will absolutely betray. So here's the question. China right now is hurting, and they're having some serious issues. We think we're having $11 eggs. They can't get eggs in China. Like, they're in a serious problem. So I'm wondering how the dominoes will fall. Now think about it, and you guys are pointing it out in the chat. Turkey is a NATO member, but Turkey is also friendly to Russia. Like, they're kind of playing the middle ground there. Pakistan is not friendly to Russia, but they're friendly to China, or they've got beholden to China. India is friendly with Russia. India is friendly with Russia. That could be a whole other shit show. Now, we're all worried about Ukraine and Russia, but it would be very easy for Putin to say, you know, we're going to have another problem somewhere else. You know what? All right, we'll negotiate here. We'll take this part of the Donbass. You take that. Okay, we're done. Fuck y'all. And suddenly move
Someone with a 972 area code sent a long message.
All those units to India to help them. Or they'll send a bunch of equipment to India, right? Because, I mean, think about it. If Russia needs money and India's buying guns and India's buying oil, well, that's a cash cow for the old USSR, now the Russian Federation. So are they going to suddenly pivot and say, you know what, okay, we're going to negotiate the Ukraine war. We have another war to fight, and it's more important. And Russia's learning about the capability of our HIMARS. They're learning the capability of our Bradleys. They're learning the capability of NATO weaponry in this meat grinder of Ukraine. And they're improving their shit. Have you remembered in the beginning, the damn BTRs, those armored cars they use, were getting flat tires? Hey, Teresa. Hey, Jason. Hey, Jules. Getting flat tires everywhere and wrecking, and they couldn't even get through the mud. All of a sudden, Russia's equipment stopped breaking down. Like, they started getting very good at what they were doing. Now, Ukraine got good too, and they've been beating each other up. But Russia's improved their military. It's almost like they needed a proving ground to get back to where they could fight peer on peer with the bigger countries. And Ukraine was where they chose to do it because they wanted a buffer between them and NATO. But yeah, I'm wondering what would happen if Pakistan and India blow up and it really gets into a full-scale war. Bangladesh would probably side with India because they've got a beef with Pakistan also. Even though they're a Muslim country as well, I think they've got some serious issues with Pakistan because Pakistan did something ugly to them. And where would China fall? Where would Russia fall? Whose advisors would go to help who? And was this all a play to prevent the US and the EU from saying, you know what? India, you're now the new manufacturing hub. Fuck China. So it makes you wonder the timing of this, right? Look at Sudan. They're in the middle of a civil war. The civil war broke out a month after their government said, oh, we're going to allow Russian destroyers to dock in our port. We're going to give them sanctuary. We're going to give them a little base here for a couple of submarines. It wasn't something as huge, but it was significant enough. And all of a sudden, they had a civil war out of nowhere. You don't think the US or the Brits or the French were like, we don't want Russian frigates over there, so we're going to start a civil war. And now you guys will be screwed up for 4 years trying to figure that out. So it makes you wonder. And what scares me the most is that Pakistan and India both have atomic weapons, and they've both openly said that they would use them. And there are certain red lines. Now, India shut off water to parts of Pakistan, and Pakistan has openly said cutting off the water supply to our civilian population is an atomic or nuclear red line for them. And I don't think that's going to end well. And even, let's just say they do have an exchange on a tactical level, right? I got to move over because people apparently don't know how to drive in a parking lot. A limited exchange, and then everyone says, oh, wow, that's really bad. Let's stop. That would still have horrendous environmental and geopolitical consequences. That would just be ugly. It would just be freaking ugly. And the problem is, unlike the Russians, Putin and his circle, they're not stupid. The Chinese are not stupid either. Hold on, Niels. Bricks has been dead. I said much on my channel. Well, if they think they're in threat, they think they need a buffer. Go figure. Well, look at North and South Korea. It's not a buffer country, but it's the DMZ, which might actually be a great solution in Ukraine, and say, you know what? Okay, you don't like this. We're going to take this 4 miles of whatever, and we're going to make a DMZ right here. And now everybody stop fucking with each other, and then everyone's happy. And they could put all their tanks and soldiers there and symbolically be angry at each other. And oops, yeah. So, hey, Daryl. Hey, Jules again. So it makes me wonder the timing. Yeah, but Jason, it was effective. But are we not in a Cold War? It's just like we shook up all the countries. Now the countries are different, but the Cold War came back. So we'll see. I mean, a lot of it, we're all speculating, right? We don't know what the hell's happening. But that would be amazingly ugly if India and Pakistan, because the Russians will play geopolitical games, right? They're not stupid. Even during the Cuban Missile Crisis, they picked up the phone with Kennedy, like, hey, look, this shit's getting out of hand. So what do? You take your missiles from Turkey, we'll pull them from Cuba, everybody's happy. Are we good? And Kennedy's like, yeah, we're good. And, you know, and I think the whole Cuban Missile Crisis was done on purpose. Russia never expected to be able to stage those rockets in Cuba. They just wanted to force Kennedy to the table to take them out of Turkey. And they succeeded. But there were negotiations. They had the backlines, right? China and the US, they're like, hey, you really want to fight over Taiwan? It's going to be ugly. Our countries will be fucked up. No, that sounds like a really bad idea. Yeah, Neil, it's hard to say, man. China was our big ally in World War II, and then, you know, Ho Chi Minh screwed up. Not Ho Chi Minh, that's Vietnam. Mao went and screwed everything up. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe we created Mao by our own stupidity. It may not even be. I think we give our leaders too much credit. I think half of the bad shit that happens is on purpose, and the other half is out of sheer stupidity because our leaders didn't think through their decisions. So who knows? But that's concerning to me because that would be amazingly bad for the market. It would be amazingly bad for supply chain, even though we wouldn't be affected in the US, Canada, Mexico. And that's right. Mao was a good friend of Pappy Borington. For those of you who don't know that reference, he was the captain or commander of the Black Sheep Squadron, if I recall correctly, if that's who you're referring to. Because Pappy Borington, and not many in history, and he's the one I know of. But in any case, folks, that's something to watch. Is that could escalate, and India and Pakistan have such an ancient hatred for one another that they may not react rationally the way we would expect NATO, Russia, China to react. They might react more viscerally, and that could escalate. And now there's politicians in India saying, well, you know what? While we mobilize the army, why don't we take the property from the Himalayas we think China stole? And that would get ugly because China's going to defend themselves. And now you have two large armies going at it, both who have atomic weapons. So I'm not sure where all this is going. I have some theories, but I actually threw a theory to my friend the other day, and he's like, man, I get what you're saying, but some people would think that's a little ethnically biased because I was implying that they're manipulating certain groups to create terrorist acts, to create a war, to do something else, but I can't put the pieces together because I don't know enough. So, yeah, Daryl, so it's definitely, yeah, Jason, interesting times. So it's important we understand what, if those two countries get it worse, it's going to shut down their ports, it's going to shut down exports. And also India is where those big trade routes from the South China Sea come around Malaysia and Indonesia, and they come into the Middle East. So all that trade through the Indian Ocean is going to get disrupted. So we need to understand what affects us, what doesn't. Oil and gas probably will go in the other direction. because it'll go through the Suez or it'll go around Africa to the Western Hemisphere. But I think there are a lot of manufactured and food products will get disrupted, and it'll disrupt Africa a lot because a lot of the food comes straight down and around, and that might cause more issues in the African continent and create whole other problems over there, and other exports may be affected. So I'm curious to see, but I hope and pray that I'm wrong, because ultimately both China and Russia have very big financial stakes in India and Pakistan. And would it come to where those two would intervene? In which case, what does the US do? We sit there and go, what the hell, while China and Russia get into it over Pakistan and India. So interesting hypothesis. Again, this is a reference to Tom Clancy's old book, The Bear and the Dragon. He touched on this, but the premise was different. It was more energy based as opposed to trade and financial, but the same premise is that something happened and Russia and China were allied with different sides, and they wound up getting into it with one another. So it's an interesting and concerning premise. I could be wrong, but it's something we really need to pay attention to. Ukraine was a breadbasket of Europe, but there are other places to get food from. But now you have two nuclear powers having a direct fight. We don't have that anywhere else, right? Iran, well, technically doesn't have nukes that we know of, but Israel does, but they won't use them because none of the guys they're fighting have them, and that would be unjustified. Taiwan and China, they don't want to do that. China wants Taiwan intact. Russia, Ukraine, Russia doesn't want to do that. They already had Chernobyl, and it caused a bunch of issues for both countries, so they're like, no. If they were put in a corner, maybe on a tactical level, but that's not something Russia wants. But I'm sure they do, Daryl, but we just don't know for sure officially. But Pakistan and India definitely do, and they've been very public about it. And this ancient hatred, this is not a geopolitical rivalry like China and the US or Russia and NATO. This is an ancient hatred. This is an ethnic, you raped our women, you burned our village kind of evil hatred shit, like the Israelis and Middle East, Israelis and Iranians and the Saudis. And that scares me because then leaders act emotionally, and that worries the shit out of me, but we'll see. But anyway, understand your supply chain. Understand, this is your takeaway today. Understand, okay, what would affect us if that happened? Try to learn what you're using today that's coming from those countries and position yourself to have that available if you need it. And if you can't find an alternative, store up now. So I do need to go get some more Mylar bags, because I got a Wallaby discount code. I actually have a Wallaby discount code in the comments in my videos, so feel free to use that. I think they take $5 or 5%. I don't remember what it is. But anyway, go use that if you need Mylar. And shop around also. Make sure you get the best deal. I mean, you want to support one of the channels, that's great, but if you can save 20% instead of 10, do that. You won't hurt my feelings. I absolutely get it. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you guys be good, be safe out there. I'm going to go home this evening and inventory. And tomorrow afternoon will be more inventory. Hey, Jeep Girl. But ladies and gentlemen, you guys be good, be safe out there. And remember, keep an eye on this one, because that would be super disruptive to the trade. We see it coming. Most of the public don't. There are people out here in the street at Walmart. I was talking to my friend, and someone behind me said, wait, India and Pakistan are having a war? Like they didn't even know. So we see this stuff. We know it's out there. So position yourself, again, like I said, the boxer analogy. You can't stop getting punched, but you can roll with the punch if you know it's coming. You see it, you roll, you move. That's what we want to do. Be able to maneuver when weird stuff happens. You guys be good, be safe. I got to get to the office because somebody's already texting me whatever mischief I got into. You